airports, it's a really good chance to look at all the headlines and you know, the magazine covers. And the cover of Time magazine this week says, "Can we bribe students to study?" So they're trying these experiments. They can't get students to go to class, so they're starting to pay them. If you read this book, we'll give you $2. There's an experiment in Dallas. And wow, I mean, you look at that cover of Time magazine this week. Right? And what happens in February, there's this famous TED conference, and at the TED conference, there was this woman who's a game designer, and she said, "We've spent," how many of you guys have played World of Warcraft? Oh, see, there you are. Okay, that's a couple, we enlightened crowd here. She said, "We as humanity have spent 9.3 trillion years playing World of Warcraft." She says, we spent 9 billion hours a year playing solitaire alone. And so we have all this time, but we need to be entertained. We have all these, like, we're going to school, but now we're thinking, oh, we can't motivate them. And why can't we do that? Because we've lost connection to our spirit. And this is a really problematic situation. So I really want to talk about framing, you know, peace is such a big thing. And I want to simplify it for myself. This is how I understand it. And I want to frame it in the context of generosity and small acts of kindness. And I'll tell you a little bit of my story along the way as well. So whenever I scratch my head and think about all the big things in life, I try to look at the giants of nonviolence and peace. And one of those giants, as of course all of you know, is Gandhi. I'm a huge fan of Gandhi for so many reasons, but every time I seem to explore, like, you know, it's like this cave. You go in deeper and you find out these amazing stories. I mean, Gandhi was much more than what the world knows of him. So I read this story maybe a couple months ago, and it blew me away. Gandhi was, this is a few months shy of his 70th birthday. He's up on stage, the community has come together, it's a prayer meeting. And, you know, he's talking about nonviolence, and that's what he's celebrated for. But there were a lot of people in India who thought that violence is a much quicker way to solve the problem. And Gandhi himself admitted, he's like, yeah, it would be faster, but we're not interested in just achieving that end. Means are important. And so he was hardcore, sort of, you know, satyagraha, you know, cling to the truth kind of a person. And there were a lot of people who didn't appreciate his approach within India. And so he's at this prayer gathering. And, you know, 70, everyone knows who he is, amazing person. And all of a sudden, large prayer gathering, 600 thugs with like swords and sticks and stuff, they start coming in and they assault the audience. Now imagine, we're all sitting here and like all of a sudden 600 thugs come in and they just are like, yeah, you want to see nonviolence? Let's see your nonviolence now, whack, you know? And people are bleeding, people doing it. And all of a sudden there's chaos, and here you have this, you know, beacon of nonviolence, of love. What are you gonna do? What's your response? And everyone's kind of stunned, everyone's scared, everyone's kind of like flustered, and, you know, everything is disrupted. And one person says, wait a second, what's happening to Gandhi? Gandhi's up there, and he's just sitting. There's this sereneness on his face. He's in this prayer mode. And his eyes are closed, and there's this complete sereneness, but his body is pulsating. It's almost like he's feeling the negativity of everybody in the crowd. He's like, you know, it's just violently shaking, but his face is really serene. And people are looking at him, it's like, okay, what do we do? I don't think it's safe for him to be here. I think they're going to probably assault him as soon as they make their way through the crowd. And so they said, you know, yeah, we need to take him out. So they go up to him and they said, you know, Gandhiji, I think you need to kind of leave out through the back door. You know, he says, no, I want to go and talk to the head thug. And they're like, okay, you know, I mean, of course, if Gandhi says so, you got to do it. But then they're all kind of scared. It's like, you know, I don't think it's a good idea. And then they said, okay, we'll go. Okay, fine. So they created a little posse to go along with Gandhi, just in case no one messes with our men. Right? And Gandhi says, no, 70-year-old man. I want to go along. And he couldn't walk, and so he had one of the younger guys, he put his arm on his shoulder, and he actually goes up to this guy. And he looks him in the eye, and he says, I want to hear your point of view. And then he turns to me and he says, how can I be of service? And this guy, over the course of that conversation, This is a man who brought 600 thugs into a conference with Gandhi and started violence. This man, just over the span of that conversation, is so rocked, is so touched, so moved, he turns to Gandhi and he says, look, actually, it's not really safe for you to walk out alone. Let me take you through the back door. So he actually saves Gandhi's life that day. This is the power of nonviolence. This is the power of peace. But it comes from, when something negative happens, it comes from this inner capacity that we have to be connected to. Gandhi called it the soul force. And when everyone comes together with this soul force, there's this collective, it's more than sum of the parts. Right? It adds up to something much greater than 1 + 1. It's not just 2. It ends up being 20. So I look at my life and I say, okay, I can't be Gandhi. I mean, I could try, but we all can try. But what's the minimum elegant step to go in that direction? And for me, there was a friend of mine who was teaching a course, and he had a wonderful little story. They talk about how can we be good, and they were talking about ethics. And he says, how he's polling everyone. There's this Mexican man raises his hand. He's like, I learned how to be good for my child. And he says, what do you mean? How? He says, well, I had a 5-year-old, and we were in Mexico, and it was Christmas Day. The night before, I had given him my gifts. It was very exciting. We were all connected, and here we were in Mexico, and all of a sudden, a beggar comes at the door, and the beggar wants something. So what do? You've got to give him something. And so this child, this 5-year-old, and his dad go and talk to the beggar, and then the dad, this is kind of the Lion King Mufasa moment, and he's like, son, give him one of your toys. And so the son is like, Dad, I just got those toys yesterday, He's like, I don't really want to give them. And he's like, wait, okay, Dad's pretty serious, Mufasa has spoken. So he goes inside, and he's probably someone like me. He goes inside, picks up a toy, but he picks up his least favorite toy. He comes out, okay, all right, I'll give you my toy. Dad looks at him again. Son, give him your favorite toy. And again, Simba's like, oh no, I don't really want to do it. And this time he cries. Right? And he refuses. He's like, Dad, I'm not going to do it. I don't care. This is like, I just got to get serious. My favorite toy, blah, 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 Dad looks at him very compassionately, but with confidence, and says, son, give him your favorite toy. And he didn't even want to be there when his son did this, so he actually stepped out in the back. Son goes back, takes his favorite toy, goes to the door, offers it to this kid. And Dad's thinking, okay, he's going to come back. I need to, do something. I need to bribe him, I need to make it, distract him, I need to do something. And this kid comes back. He's all excited. He looks to his dad and he says, Dad, can I do that again? It's something very simple. You don't need degrees, you don't need complicated theories to explain all this. A 5-year-old gets it. We all get it. You look at scientific research that says toddlers are actually predisposed to behaving in a way of empathy, right? To empathize with other people, to be connected, to feel this oneness. We are predisposed to that. But it's just that we forget it. We're also worried, I don't know how you are, but when I was in college, you're worried about what job you're going to get and how you're going to sustain yourself. And at some point, you think about it and you say, wait a second. When did I start thinking about business models? I mean, I was like 2 years old and I never thought about it, and I've been just fine for the last 20 years, and now all of a sudden I'm like so worried and so obsessed, and now you start looking at the whole world is like, oh, what can this person do for me? And that starts to really weigh you down. So along my journey, I've learned 3 things that I want to share with you. Very simple things. This is not like, it doesn't take PhDs to understand it, but they've been very real for me, and I'll share a couple stories along those lines. First is give, right? Serve. It's a very simple thing. I had the same kind of moment with my dad and myself, except that it felt so good as a kid to do small things that I just kept doing it. And my dad was, instead of saying, son, give me your face, he's like, son, I think it's time to stop now. And I just still kept doing it because it felt right. Right? I was in high school, and then you want to go to a good college. I was in college, you're going to get a job. I got a job, and then you want to get a promotion. I got a couple promotions, and then you're just like, oh no, now getting a job is no longer good enough. You have to do your own startup, and this is in the height of the .com era. And so it's like, oh yeah, look at people in your peer group, you know, they're all looking for like millions, and they're driving their, you know, Beamers, and they're doing all the stuff you gotta be. And it's like at some point you question that whole race altogether. Maybe it's just a bunch of people who've forgotten, who lost track, and why should you just go in that direction? Like maybe there's another direction, maybe that's a dead end. You don't know, but we have to question, we have to ask. And so I asked myself that question. And I had this thing of like including other people. So whenever I do something, I'd say, hey, you know, let's all do it together. Let's get together and do something. So a few of us, I was working, and after my first job, I couldn't, you know, I have pretty simple material needs. I'm not really interested in, you know, getting things and engaging in them at that level. And so I said, what do? We should like give. Right? I'm making this salary and I should give. And so I told a bunch of my friends, we should all give. We should all give together. Okay, 10, 20, 30 bucks, whatever it is, 300, 3,000, it makes no difference. Let's all pull it together and let's give. So it started by giving money. And then you give money and then you say, well, I want to give a little bit more. Because money ends up being, for me, money's a good thing. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but it ended up being like you have your 5-star meal, you're okay, and then from the leftovers you're giving. And I said, what if I want to give a little bit more than that? I just want to give my time. And so I started volunteering. And then you're volunteering and you're doing something, you know, maybe stuffing envelopes, doing this, doing that. And I had this intense personality, so I said, I want to go volunteer where no one else is going to go. You know, kind of like bring ambition into volunteering. I don't know. So some people learn hard, right? So it's like I was a volunteer at a hospice. And so hospice where, you know, terminally ill patients go. So I would interact with young people, with people on their deathbeds. And I actually went at the age of 17. They said, no, you gotta be 18. And so I turned 18 and I went up to them and said, I'm ready to sign up to volunteer. And they said, you're crazy. You want to be around dead people when you're 18? I said, well, you know, everything changes and I want to be comfortable with that. I don't want to turn 60 and be surprised. Oh, we all die. Oh, I shouldn't have been attached because you know, I'm not taking anything with me anyways. It's like, I want to learn that lesson when I'm 18. You know, I don't want to be realizing that way later in the game. So I did that. And it was powerful to give your time. But then part of me said, I want to give a little bit more. You know, I want to go out and give myself. Like, just use me. Go ahead. I want to be used up. No, don't even need to keep track. You know, we're also afraid of being like used up and it's like, I need to get something in return. Forget it. I just want to be used up. That was the feeling I had in my heart. And we started an organization as a part of that. You know, all kinds of things happened, and as part of that, we went to a homeless shelter. It was like completely serendipitous. We went to a homeless shelter, we said, we want to help. What can we do? And they said, well, no, you tell us, what can you do? And we're like, well, we don't know. You know, we got 2 hands, 2 eyes, like we can do stuff. One of us is an engineer, so we ended up building them a website. And this is in 1999. And that was radical at the time because it was hard to build websites. And so these nonprofit, you know, if you're a struggling homeless shelter, you don't know how to do this stuff. And so we built it, and it felt great for us, kind of like Paul was talking about, why do you do this stuff? Because it feels great, right? Like that 5-year-old kid, it's like, yeah, it's amazing. You smile, the other person smiles, you feel connected, and you're like, oh, what a beautiful day. So it's like, that's good enough for me. I don't need bribes, I don't need to play games, I don't need entertainment, I don't need to be famous. This is it. This is the reward in and of itself. And that became this organization called Charity Focus. I joke about it because it's, you know, we don't really do charity and we're not really all that focused either, you know. But it was like, you know, midnight, you're like, oh yeah, hey, you know, we need to like call ourselves something. Okay, go to, you know, let's find a domain name. And we looked for it and it's like, okay, yeah, Charity Focus sounds good. Isn't this a charity? You know, we're like young 20-somethings. And then it just went viral, it went crazy. Media took that story and all kinds of people came. And they said, hey, I want to give too. And when we said, okay, well, let's all give together. And we, everything, all our services were free. So all nonprofits came, hey, free, great, we want to take it. So now we had all kinds of needs and all kinds of resources, and we're just putting it together. And we really don't have a clue how to run organizations or anything. But we had one. And so it was very interesting to like just give and give and give. And there is clearly something that you start getting, which is really the second phase of this giving, the second big lesson. The second lesson for me is that you receive. Right? Initially, you go out and give because, hey, it's a good thing to do. Go out and give. You give, you give. And you give till it hurts. You give even when it's not comfortable. You give even when it's inconvenient. You go out of your way to be of service to other people. And you do that, and you say, wow, okay, I'm giving. At some point, though, if you practice enough of that, is the second stage, which is that you receive. We're so disconnected with what we're receiving. Actually, we're receiving in every moment. Right? Even me, right now, you guys are giving me your attention. Right? I'm receiving, and in every moment. It's just that we're not open to all of this. 9 months is of a gift, unconditional gift, is how we all were born. Right? We've received from our moms. That's how we come into the world. But our egos become so high that it's like we don't want to see how much we're receiving. So it's very difficult, right? Because we want to think that we're the hotshots and we're making stuff happen. But actually, it's not quite that simple. Because you can't give without actually receiving in that very moment. So it's a profound thing. And we don't have places where people can receive. So you guys heard about Seva Cafe. We run a restaurant on Sundays in Berkeley. And now actually it's in DC and Chicago. It's called Karma Kitchen. Same concept. You go to Karma Kitchen, you have a meal, and it's gifted to you. Like you walk up off the streets, and all of a sudden you're there, and it's like, oh, it's a meal, and it's a gift. Oh, who's it a gift from? Well, it's a gift from someone in the previous week. At the end of your meal, your check will read 0, and you have a chance to pay forward for somebody in the next week. And you parse that a little bit further. You know, people walk into a restaurant like that, maybe in this crowd, this is probably, you know, you're used to that, and you can appreciate and understand that. For some people, it's like a shocking thing. You know, you can walk into a restaurant and you're like, what do you mean? No way. What's the trap? You know? And some people actually just start crying. Like it happens. I mean, there was a guy that came in, just a big guy, you know, had tattoos all around his thing, and he just comes in and he's like, no. Are you serious? And we're like, yeah. And he says, can I get a table? And we said, yeah, well, actually we have a community table. You can sit on that table with other people, or you can sit by yourself. He's like, yeah, actually, can I get that corner table over there? I said, sure. You know, and so he goes and sits in that corner. And I mean, I've just given him the menu. You know, I was the maitre d' at the door. I was just giving him the menu. He just sits down and he just starts crying. And I said, well, he hasn't even tasted the food, so it can't be the food. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know what to do really, to be honest. I was a little confused. And then you go up and he starts sharing his story. And he says, you know, I'm from a family of, I think he said 13 siblings. And we grew up on the streets. We were very poor. And, you know, he's from Cuba, big guy, but now in tears telling me the story. I mean, it's like, it's a really surreal scene. And he says, you know, we used to be hungry all the time. And so what I was really good at is I was a thief. I would steal. And right here at this restaurant was the place where I'd steal the most from. Because they would do these food deliveries, and out the back, you know, they preload stuff on the stairs, and then they take it out to the van, and in between the time when they go back in, I was like zoom in and out, you know, and everybody knew me for that, and that's how I was. I was the food thief. And today, like 20 years later, I'm coming back to the same place, and what a place. Now you're actually honoring the food that you're offering. And he says, he just started crying. And this happens in all, I mean, not everyone has this dramatic a story, but some people are just touched that people would care to do this, right? You look a little deeper and you say, wait a second, there's people from the previous week whom I don't know. These are volunteers who are serving me the food whom I don't know, and I'm paying forward for people after me whom I don't know. It's very different from $5. I know how I got this. It's very hard to get my $5. Now you go to Mickey D's and you say, oh, hey, you better be smiling because you're getting paid, and give me this because this is not the right order. Right? It's a very different me transaction versus a we, versus a humbler, gentler. Oh, wow. So how can you actually tap into that? And people don't have that experience of receiving. So we have, you know, one of the funniest things that happens actually at Karma Kitchen is what happens to the volunteers. Some of you who might have volunteered know about this. But at Karma Kitchen, these volunteers come in from all walks of life. And there's really some great stories. One time, just maybe 4 weeks ago, there was a guy who came in, and he came in with his mom to volunteer. And you know, his dad had died when he was young, and so mom, on his birthday, every time would be, MJ, what do you want? MJ, I gotta get you a gift. And MJ's like, Mom, I'm 34, I don't need a gift. And she's like, no, MJ, I get you a gift every year. What do you want? Tell me what you want, you know? And she's like, Mom. And then my mom doesn't listen. Okay, so MJ's like, I know what I want. I want you to volunteer with me at Karma Kitchen. So they come, and Mom's like, oh man, it was much easier to buy something from the store than like 8 hours of working hard. And they come. And in the orientation, we're all talking about this, and it turns out that it's actually another guy's birthday too. And since we were all talking about it, at one point, we paused the restaurant. And we paused the restaurant, and we said, everybody. Now, you go to this restaurant, it's a very different feeling, right? It's actually a pretty big restaurant. And it's a different feeling because no one is paying for their own. Imagine, right? This person's paying for this person, it's paying for this person. So at the end of the day, it's maybe the same amount of money, but there's this value in between. There's this transformation. And when you pause the restaurant, and we say, hey, it's Praveen's birthday, we're all gonna sing a birthday song, like all of a sudden, all that energy, which is all in the room, all of a sudden gets focused. And it's, I mean, I tell you, I don't know, everybody comes to Karma Kitchen and says there's a vibe. I mean, I don't know how to, you know, what metric to use to describe it, but there is a vibe. And all of a sudden we pause the restaurant, and it's this guy's birthday, and he doesn't know we're doing this, and all that goodness gets channeled in one direction. He hadn't received that before. People then are starting to write these, you know, cards, and you know, from people that doesn't know, and he hadn't received that. And when you receive it that way, an incredible thing happens. Your cup overflows. Your cup of gratitude overflows. And you have to actually go out and do something else. So he says, Nipun, he comes up to me, I was volunteering too, says, Nipun, do you have an extra t-shirt? I said, yeah, well, actually I do have an extra Karma Kitchen t-shirt, but why do you want a t-shirt? And he says, well, yeah, just give me a t-shirt. I said, okay, cool. So he goes out, takes that t-shirt, goes to the bathroom, and puts that t-shirt on. And I said, oh, Praveen, there was something wrong with your t-shirt? And he says, well, actually, I was serving that table, and you see that African-American woman over there? We really connected, because I had a Jimi Hendrix t-shirt on, and she loved my t-shirt. And my cup is overflowed, I have to do something. So I thought, I'll take my shirt off, and I'll give it to her. Shirt off his back, and this woman is completely rocked, right? She's like, she can't believe it. I mean, you don't go to a restaurant and say, hey, that's a really nice Jimi Hendrix t-shirt, and then the guy comes back later and he's like, oh, actually, here, you know, but please laundry it before you use it, you know? She's like completely stunned. She goes home, tells all her friends about it, and then she comes back and she comes to this website. She posts a photo of herself like dancing, you know, and it's like, here, I'm so happy, and she titles it Sharing is Caring or something like that, you know. It's this beautiful thing, and it was all because this guy received something simple like a birthday song. We are so connected to that spirit of receiving. We are constantly receiving in every moment, and it's very important to be connected to that. So the more you give, the more you realize that actually you're receiving just as much, if not more. And then comes the third stage. For me, at least, this has been my journey. I'm just sharing the lessons I've learned along the way. The third stage is kind of like that woman in the photo. It's really dance, right? It's about not, and I say dance because it's not, you can't keep track. You don't know if you're receiving in this very moment. Okay, I'm giving a talk, you're giving me this attention. It's really hard to say, what's the mathematics of this? right? Is this worth 10 bucks and is that worth 3 bucks? Or is it the other way around? Or what is it? Right? Oscar Wilde used to say, we know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. How can you like simplify everything into these Excel spreadsheets? You really can't. You think Google can, Google is built on ones and zeros, right? How do you look at a piece of art, and you say, what is that? Is that a 1 or a 0? You really can't do that. I mean, it's very complex. And so this dance, which is what Gandhi was doing up on the stage, back to Gandhi, right? He's up there, he's like, hey, is this good or bad? Do I need to give or do I need to receive? Doesn't know. But he's just up on stage dancing, allowing that dance to inform a radical dynamic response. So one of my friends, we're good on time? Oh, good, all right. One of my friends, I've got endless stories. I mean, I can tell you story after story, but this was a great one. We do this project, actually, I should tell you a little bit about that. We do this project called Smile Cards. How many of you guys have heard of Smile Cards? Like 3, okay, hey, that's great. Let me take one out to show you. Because this is like one of my absolute favorite things. And I brought a bunch back there too. It says, so a few of us were thinking, we need to bring more kindness in the world, but let's do it in a cool, hip way. How do you get people more jazzed about doing acts of kindness? And one of my friends, actually my cousin, he and his friends were interested in all this, and they had a band, but they didn't want to do like cheesy stuff. And so we were talking about it, and we said, let's make kindness challenging. And we came up with this idea called a smile card. So you do an act of kindness anonymously for someone, because anonymous is very hard, right? Because you want credit for it, you want something in return. And so we said, hey, just go out, do something, blow somebody away with kindness. I see that you're not really doing mine all that right. I'm going to shortchange your massage too. Right? It's not about that. It's like you give your full gusto one way, and you trust that what goes around comes around. And it all starts with something really, really small. And this is my last story. Unless you want more, but no, this is, I'm sure I've taken up. We're good, right? One last story, okay. I was in India, and so this is about this idea of, we have to give, receive, and dance, and we have to do that practice every moment is an opportunity to practice. It doesn't matter how much you have, it doesn't matter how little you have. I've gone and talked to the millionaires and even billionaires of the world, and it's like, you can give in the same way that someone homeless on the streets can give. But you have to be connected to that. There are a lot of people on the streets that have more of a giving attitude than those people who have a lot. That's not to say those who have a lot are all like that, because there are a lot of people with open hearts that also have a lot, and there's a lot of people on the streets that have closed hearts too. But it's independent of where you are. You can give no matter where you are, and it starts with something small. And it starts in every moment. So I was in India, and amazing thing happened. So I have a bunch of friends in the slums, and and I'll go and hang out with them, and we've created a little compassion gang in the slums, and they'll go out and do all kinds of cool things in that community. Because I have this unflinching belief that anyone can be kind, and you just have to figure out creative ways to do it. And so we do that. We practice it in the slums. These guys are like $1-a-day kind of people, and they're out there looking for ways to be kind. And they actually do some beautiful things. I could tell you a lot of stories there. But because of that connection, one of them on my last trip, last February, calls me over and says, Nipun, you have to come. My mom really wants to make something and serve you breakfast. This is a very common thing in India. Like, you can't go to anyone's house without getting a meal. This is like, and they feed you and feed you and feed you, and so it's like, okay, I'll come. And he says, no, you have to come for lunch. I said, I can't come for lunch because I got to do all this, but I'll come for breakfast, And so I go early in the morning, and she's cooked up. It's simple food, but it's offered with a lot of love. And it's like this beautiful thing. We're sitting on the ground, and she's frying some hot stuff, and okay, we get this. And right as we're leaving, she hands me a little bag. she says, Nipun, this is a gift for you. And I looked at that. You know, in the US, we have this tradition of, okay, anyone gives you a gift, you open it up, you see it, and you say, hey, wow, that was great, thank you. In India, you don't do that. You know, you go home and then you open it. And here I had this, you know, she gives me a gift. First of all, I don't even know if I should be taking a gift from her. And then it's like a gift, but then the gift is in a ripped up plastic bag. And I'm not even sure it's a gift. So it's like I'm totally confused about the whole situation. So I turned to my friend and I said, you know, what's the protocol? What do I do? You know, and he says, oh, Nipun, you know what that is? I said, no. And he says, oh, that's a really special gift. Well, go ahead, why don't you open it? And so I opened this bag. It was like this ripped pink plastic bag. And she, at one point, this is a woman who has been a janitor for, and janitors, like in India, are like they get paid very, very little, you know. And so that's how she raised her 2 kids, because her husband had passed away when the kids were young. And she would just go to these schools, and she had this thought, I want to give, but I'm just a janitor, right? We don't even have enough for our family. What can I do? And one of my friends, the guy sitting next to me, he says, well, you know, Gandhi, do you know the story of Gandhi? He says, when Gandhi lost a pencil one time, it was like this small, Kakasaheb Kalelkar, who's like one of these major personalities, he says, Gandhi, you're the father of the nation. What are you doing looking for that small pencil? You know, here's a big pencil. Here's 5 pencils. What's the big? He's like, no, I need to look for that pencil. And he's like, okay, fine. And Gandhi's looking for it. Next day, still looking for it. This guy comes and is like, okay, you gotta just take this pencil. You know, you really don't have time to like waste after a pencil. Come on, you're Gandhi, right? And he says, no, you don't understand. It was a little child that gave me that pencil. And that means a lot to me. It's much more than a pencil to me. I can't waste even that. Right? So here's my friend telling this janitor woman this story. She says, when you are sweeping, kids throw away these pencils, which are, you know, sometimes reusable. Why don't you collect them? And offer it to a nonprofit organization. We'll make it happen. And so in this ripped plastic bag, ripped pink plastic bag, were pencils this size. And she knew that me and my friend, we were going to offer it to a nonprofit that works with other children that don't even have those pencils. But it was much more than those pencils. I was like in a state of shock when I first heard this. I mean, imagine, so much love. It was not even about the pencils. I had to go to an ice cream factory, of all things, and speak, you know, to this ice cream factory people. And I just opened and I said, you know, you want to know about giving? Let me just tell you what just happened to me. Take a look at this plastic bag. And what I'm holding, I put my hand in there for the first time. I took out a bunch of these like erasers and dead, you know, sharpeners and pencils, and I said, this is love. And it was so powerful just to hold it. Forget me, forget the audience. There were people on the panel, they were all in tears. This is the power of one woman doing something very, very small. And that invitation is open to each and every one of us in every moment. Thank you.